Is a low budget a good excuse to have a bad movie? Hello and welcome to RotD Review of the Day, and we're back after a weekend. Saturday we had the 4-hour live stream, the first one that we're going to be making an annual event around Halloween time. This one was on location at Alfred University. We had a fantastic time. We had games, prizes, discussions, reviews, all sorts of different things happening. And then yesterday, Sunday, I worked on editing the 4-hour long video to make it legally compliant and copyright and so forth. Just making sure all the ducks are in a row. So now I'm basically trying to run it through the encoder, which is giving me some fits and starts and so forth. But we're going to get it out there, and we're going to get it up there. But it's Monday now. The weekend is over. The reviews are back on, and I start today with the 2018 release of American Exorcist. This was, as you might infer from the opening stinger there, this was both a very low-budget movie, and I also didn't really care for it, I would say, at all. And I really thought it was a particular shame. There was several marks against this one. We're going to get into more detail with that, with the categories in just a little bit. But really, the big takeaway I had with this one is that it was just an absolute mess of writing and direction. I know that they were crowdfunded on Kickstarter to get the post-production done. They had what they had shot in the can, and but they needed help bringing it to cutting it and producing it and distributing it. So I think grand total, if I'm reading the numbers right, they did this for $45,000 all told, and that's a pretty low budget. But, this is a fight that I've been having with myself for a little while now. Is feeling like if I give a bad review to movies that have a low budget, as horror movies often do, oftentimes it's the first foray into the filmmaking process for so many directors and creators. It's it's inherently, aside from effects, which can be cobbled together, it's a fairly low budget, low risk filmmaking genre, and so it kind of lends itself to naturally be that entry level into filmmaking. So you wind up watching more low budget things, but at the same time, that has given us so many gems in the world of horror that, as bad as I feel for picking on the little guy, I don't think that budget is an excuse, because so many filmmakers have had low budget and have had amazing movies. If they can pull it off, not to say that talent is distributed equally, but even so, just reviewing things, and that brings me to point 2, is every movie, in order for me to be fair and for the scoring system that I run through to be trustworthy, every movie has to be judged on the same merit, on the same level, on the same playing field. Otherwise, it would be a sliding scale, and nobody would know what numbers were matching what, just because I happen to have a cult following, or this and that and this and that. So everything gets judged equally, and enough dilly-dallying and introducing. Let's get into the categories for American Exorcist. As always, 4 different categories, each one worth up to 25 points for a total possible score of 100 points. And the plot of this one, the briefest of summaries. A paranormal investigator, played by Fallon Jocelyn as Georgette, goes into a skyscraper. And it has this history behind it of, it used to have residences, and then it quickly turned into a hotel very briefly, and then it turned into pretty much just office buildings, and tragedies kept befalling it, usually around Christmas time, and it has since been kind of closed up. So now she's there running some investigations. All right. And things go wrong. That is the briefest of synopsis that I can give, and unfortunately, it's also the most coherent that I can give, because from there the movie just turns into a mess. And if you asked me, gun to my head, to describe the events that were happening on the screen in any kind of storytelling fashion, I don't think I could. It was incoherent, and it was just a darn shame. I gave the plot a 5 out of 25. It felt like a movie by committee, like it had 15 different writers and none of them were talking to each other. Character motivations were questionable at best. Sequence of events were just haphazard. I don't know what happened. And maybe the written plot, as far as the screenplay goes, was much better, but what I saw on screen, and so I don't know if it's necessarily a problem with the screenplay or the editing or the direction or of all three, but either way, the plot of what I saw on the screen was pretty miserable. The intent, I gave a 3 out of 25. I really felt like nothing about what this movie was trying to do that it achieved with any real degree of success. I think it was trying to be a scary, gory thrill ride of a horrific movie, and it wasn't scary in the slightest. It wasn't interesting in the slightest. The Georgette character, I had no connection to. The only thing that I really felt like this achieved that it set out to do was it kind of sort of in some ways scratched that gore itch that we tend to have as horror movie lovers. But even then it was only okay in some areas and kind of laughable in others. So intent 3 out of 25. The acting, I gave a 6 out of 25. There is some issue that I take with this, and it's not on the shoulders of Fallon Jocelyn, but it's on the shoulders of the filmmakers themselves. This movie was headlined as a Bill Moseley movie, and it's one of the reasons that it caught my attention. And like, okay, Bill Moseley, I love Bill Moseley, I'll watch this. And the fact of the matter is, he's in the movie for a grand total of 7 or 8 minutes max. And the entirety of the movie is pretty much a one-woman show. I'd say like 98% of it is just Fallon Jocelyn in the skyscraper. And that's about it. I mean, not that there's anything wrong with having a one-woman show or a one actor principally kind of running the thing. I mean, come on, Bruce Campbell, Evil Dead 2 is just like principally one character going through the paces and until things come to a head, or at least for a good bulk portion of the movie. It's not unheard of and it can work, but the portion that I take exception to is the fact that Bill Moseley was the leading cast member in the box art, in the poster. In the IMDb page, he is front and center, and I don't necessarily have any problem with an indie movie snagging a large star for especially in the world of horror. Fine, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get Bill Moseley, we're gonna get Sid Haig, we're gonna get Lance Henriksen. That's fine. Even if you do only have them in there for 5 minutes or so, and it's clear that you managed to wrangle them for a one-day commitment while they happen to be in the same town that you're in, I get that even. I mean, it's an exciting thing. You're an indie filmmaker. You get the opportunity to work with Lance Henriksen. That's a dream come true, finally. And you can put him in your picture. That's amazing. But if he's only in it for a number of minutes, do not make him the lead name in your art and in your IMDb page. Do not make him the headliner. That is where I personally do draw the line in terms of I guess a level of trust that I have in the filmmaker. I almost feel like I'm being lied to at that point. If this had said Fallon Jocelyn. Sorry, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the name wrong. I really am. I just haven't heard it said aloud, so I only have it in print. I'm trying my best. Anyway, but if this movie had said starring Fallon Jocelyn and featuring Bill Moseley, I would have been perfectly fine with it. But his name is front and center, and I think that almost does Fallon Jocelyn a disservice. And I feel like, too, as an audience, I feel like the performance that she put in, which I thought was actually somewhat admirable. I mean, 6 out of 25 is not nothing. I thought it was better than, definitely better than bad. But I feel like whatever she put in was taken away by me wondering, where's Bill? Well, his name was first. He in every single piece of information that I have on this movie, his name was first. Where is he? And that took away from her performance, and I thought that was just a darn shame, and I feel misled. So 6 out of 25 for the acting, not too bad there. Just had to bring up that point, and almost a warning to people that haven't seen this movie yet. The technical I gave a 0, and I want to explain myself on this one. I know that I'm running out of time, and this video is running a little long, but I want to explain myself properly with this one. This movie was technically adept in some areas. I wouldn't say that it was technically proficient, but it was technically adept in some areas. But whatever it achieved was completely negated by the editing and the sound design. The editing was distracting to the point of detracting from the movie. And the sound design, I saw somewhere somebody mentioned, I think maybe it was the filmmakers talking in a subreddit, talking about how they drew inspiration from Argento's Suspiria. And there was an element of that I got, but they didn't do it well at all. And that was the music that they had playing throughout this movie was massively distracting. A character would go down the hallway and it would just be synthesizer loud over top of everything, and you couldn't possibly, I mean, it did nothing about the music matched the tone. And I could see some inspired by Argento, but not at all handled with the masterful brushstrokes that he employed in his movies. It's one of those things where if you aren't careful with that type of filmmaking style, you are just going to ruin your movie, and that's exactly what they did. The sound design was absolutely miserable. The music was just... I was watching this with friends, and by the end of it, every time the synthesizer started up, we're just like, oh, jeez, God. And then we'd start laughing. We're like, oh, here we go. The character happens to be walking down the hallway. Let's ramp it up with all sorts of boom, 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 and it was terrible. So whatever technical prowess this movie had, and it did have, like I said, it was adept. It had some good gore effects. It had some good camera work in some areas. I mean, not so good in others, but everything was, whatever score it might have achieved was completely negated, thrown out the window, and given a 0 by the editing and the sound design. I have no other way to put it. It ruined the movie for me. I probably would have thought that it was halfway passable. Still would have been a little irked about the Bill Moseley situation, but it would have been halfway passable if it had not been for the music and the terrible, terrible editing. So I'm sorry. I know that I'm really railing on this one, but I honestly feel like I need to do like a public service. If you happen to catch American Exorcist in your queue, and you see Bill Moseley as the headliner, or maybe you came across the subreddits and you had, hey, a fellow Redditor has a movie that they made that's fantastic. I really got to warn you that you're not in for a very good movie at all. This got a total of 14 out of 100 points on the RotD review score. So that should about do it. I'm sorry to give such a negative review right out of the gate when I came back from the live stream, but I have to be honest, and this is my honest review. So thank you for joining me. I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.